Hello, welcome everybody to tonight's lockdown webinar. So this webinar series is brought to you in association with British Rowing's official analytics partner, SAS, working to help give you the power to row. Just a reminder for everybody, this webinar is being recorded and it's going to go up on YouTube hopefully tomorrow. As we go through, Camilla's going to be asking questions to the guys in a panel format. But we're going to be doing an audience Q&A at the end. So on your column to the right, hopefully you'll see there's a question box. If you do have questions as we go through the presentation, make sure you type them in there, and I'll be reading them out to the guys at the end of the Q&A. That's it from me. I will introduce our host for this evening. Our host is Camilla Hadland. Some of you may have known her. She's done a lot of rowing up in the northeast and around the country, and more importantly, she's done a lot of commentating. So she is a commentator for World Rowing, and she was going to go off to the Tokyo Olympics this year to be a commentator there, but with the postponement, that's going to be held back. But you'll have also heard her commentating at events such as the World Champs, World Juniors, Europeans, the beach sprints in China this year, or last year even, but you'll have also heard her at local competitions like Senior Champs, Bucks, Junior Championships and Home International. So without further ado, I will pass you over to Camilla.
Thanks, James. Yep, we're speaking with some athletes who have been fighting for a place on the Tokyo team sheet, who are now, like many of us, confined to their own four walls. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to our panelists this evening. So our first panelist is Ellie Piggott, part of the current Great Britain rowing squad lightweight women's team. She was a final at the Junior Worlds back in 2009 in the women's squad. She was an under-23 world champion in the lightweight women's double in 2013 in Linz, and a world champion at the senior championships in the lightweight women's squad in Rotterdam in 2016. We also have both George and Matt Rossiter. George, like Ellie, a glittering junior career, a silver medal at the Junior Worlds back in 2009, the same year that Ellie also went to Brive, 2 bronze medals at the under-23s, and was a spare at last year's World Rowing Championships in 2009. His brother Matt, a junior world champion back in Beijing in 2007, multiple medals at under-23 level, and a 2-time world championship bronze medal winner in the men's 4 in 2017 and 2019, and a European champion in the same boat type. Welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Camilla.
Hi, Camilla.
Hey. Hi, guys. Well, look, thank you so much for taking the time, and we're going to roll through a few questions just about how you've been finding life in lockdown, really. And we've seen some really good pictures that have been taken of some of the squad, both by themselves and by Naomi Baker, of some of your home offices. So it'd be good to know what your current training setup is, where you are, who you're with, what equipment have you got, where have you got it set up. So Ellie, I don't know if you want to talk us through your home office.
Yeah, it's certainly different. So I'm currently with my parents back where I grew up, which is near Bedford. So in a sense, that's been quite nice in many ways to come back. It's not often that we get time off in a training schedule and racing schedule to spend time with parents. It's usually a short amount of time at Christmas when you still have to do some training and there's other stuff to do. So it's definitely been nice to see them. In terms of the setup, I guess, I mean, an ergo is an ergo. So in a good way, you can use one anywhere. I started off with it in the spare room, and actually pretty quickly I moved it out to the garage. Although it's a bit chilly in the morning, I have found it's better to not be in the house doing training if I can, just to get a bit of separation. So yeah, so I'm using the rowing machine. I've also got a road bike, so I've been on a few cycles out on the roads, and similarly it's quite nice to be able to do that, because as a normal program we wouldn't get the chance to do that. And then in terms of weights, that's probably been the trickiest to sort of recreate meaningful training. I'm fortunate in that my dad had some in the garage, which I think my mum had been threatening to chuck out a few times, and thankfully they remained. So they're a bit rough and ready, they're rusty, but actually they're enough to do a decent session. And I think one of the real challenges, opportunities of this thing is being creative with that. So yes, I don't have a normal weight set up, but actually as long as you've got a bit or even just body weight, you can do different things. So we're still in regular touch with our S&C, all our support staff, and the sort of weights training is more stuff with pauses and slow movements. So it's still hard, but it doesn't look like what we're doing at Bisham.
And are you getting sort of tailored advice depending on what you've got at home? Are you able to sort of say to your support staff, this is what I've got, what can I do with it? Or is it kind of a generic training program that's being tailored?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the former. We actually had a full women's squad Zoom this afternoon. So that's, including support staff and coaches, that's near on sort of 40 people. And our weights coach did say, she's got, I think, 32 different programs that she's written in a really good way, in that we've got that opportunity to, okay, this is what we've got and these are our aims. We do have a general program that's been sent out that's the same for the men and the women's squad, which is good as a guideline and something to base off, but there's a lot of individualized sessions on that, so depending on what equipment you have or what modality. So personally, I'm not a runner, but if you were a runner, there's opportunities to go for runs. For me, I've tended to choose cycling because that's what I enjoy and that's what's set up here. Yeah, it's quite a change going from everyone doing exactly the same at Caversham to actually everyone being apart and also doing slightly different things. But yeah, it's certainly different.
And Matt, George, similar setup, different setup? Any kind of similarities to what Ellie's feeling there?
Yeah, I'd say very similar to Ellie, really. George and I have moved back to our parents' house in Newbury, and it's actually been really nice. I probably have to be careful what I say because I think they're all my mum and dad and my sister are probably listening next door. But yeah, I mean, it has its moments, but it's been really nice, and I've told a few friends that it's not completely dissimilar to our normal lifestyle. I guess the fridge miraculously restocks itself, so you don't have to go food shopping that much, and obviously you're not driving around very much. But other than that, the kind of train, eat, relax, repeat is very similar to normal. And it's only when you kind of watch the news or go shopping that you remember that it's like it's all kind of kicking off. But yeah, much like Ellie, we've got 2 ergos in the garden, and luckily we're lucky enough to have an outdoor table tennis table, and Mum just bought a new cover for it, which is now the makeshift ergo protector in the evenings. So yeah, very similar. We actually play quite a lot of table tennis, which is quite nice. Sometimes it's that instead of a stretch in the morning. And then we pillaged Caversham of a weights bar and some weights before it all kicked off. So weights is fine, and then George is doing quite a lot of running, and I'm doing quite a lot of cycling. I probably again be careful because I don't know if Jürgen's listening, but trying to bend the training program as much as possible to get out on the bike and go running as much as possible. But I think generally I've been quite enjoying it. Like, it's nice to have some freedom from our kind of fairly structured regime at Caversham. It's quite strange not having the daily contact with coaches and other athletes, but I feel very lucky that I can train with George. I know a lot of people are struggling quite a lot training on their own, so I feel very kind of grateful that Mum and Dad have a garden, and that I can train with George, because it makes kind of, if I can't be bothered one morning, George's like, come on, let's go, and then it just happens. So, want to add anything?
Yeah, George, how are you finding it on the other side? Like, do you feel the same as Matt? Are you appreciating having a good training partner in your brother?
I think you'd probably take it for granted, whereas if we were by ourselves, I think it would probably be quite hard some days just to get yourself going. It's probably more enjoyable for Matt because he does me in on the ergo every day, but
you took a few scalps.
Yeah. But it's definitely good to have a training partner, even if some sessions, like Matt said, we're not doing the same thing. To get on the ergo together is nice, because that machine is tricky sometimes.
What's going to happen when it rains and all your stuff's in the garden? Where can you
Well,
go?
we've got the trusty table tennis table tarpaulin, so
Yeah,
Well,
and the weights lift garage.
fair enough. And Ellie, have you roped in any of your family at all, again, to try and sort of get motivation up and have someone else to train alongside on your bikes or your weights?
Not at the same time yet. We do actually have to have a rota, just because my parents are, I guess in a good way, trying to do something every day. And because I've got multiple sessions to fit in, I get priority over the ergo. But no, I think it's nice. It's nice for them to see sort of a bit more about what my training's about, because obviously they don't usually. I did have to rope my mum in the other day though to be my videographer, because everything's done virtually now. If it's easier to send a video to the physio of an exercise to check you're doing it right, or of a certain area that hurts or whatever. So I have roped her in, and we did 4 exercises. Again, I hope she's not listening. And she basically got the record and the off wrong. So she recorded all the bits where it's meant to be off instead of things. So we had to start again. But apart from that technical error, yeah, it's been good. But no, it's nice. There was an ergo already here and they were using it a bit already. So it's just sort of spurred them on rather than getting involved. But actually with our Zoom call earlier, it seems that quite a lot of the women's squad's parents are doing ergos. So there's a little bit of chat about creating a parents league of some form, because then it will give them some sort of comparison point. So watch this space, that might come out. And the physiologist who has to receive all the data, so every day she gets 30, 40 pictures of an ergo screen. She was keen, so that's more photos for her. So that would be quite good for them to get involved in that.
Maybe we could open it up to all the rowing
Definitely.
parents, create a big rowing league across the UK for all the parents who've been watching all this time. They've now got everyone back in their backdoor gardens and garages. Ellie, you've mentioned a couple of times that you had a Zoom call this afternoon with the squad. Talk us through how often you're keeping in touch with the squad, both from a training perspective and also then socially, because I'm sure you're missing a lot of the guys back there at Caversham.
Yeah, I think it's been quite a strange. It happened quite suddenly. So obviously the way that the lockdown came about, sort of a lot of my friends who aren't rowers were working from home already, and then we were pretty much business as usual. And then when the gyms shut, we turned up at Caversham and it was like, okay, we need to shut. So it's quite a sudden sort of goodbye to everyone. This afternoon was the first time that we had everyone together, and it was really nice to see everyone. It did take quite a long time to go around everyone, but it was nice to get a little update from people, especially, naturally there's people that you train more with and spend more time with. In terms of my situation, we have a weekly lightweight women's Google Hangout with our coach, and that's just a nice check everyone's right, sort of review of the week. And we've actually started, sounds a bit grand, but we're starting to bring in a guest speaker each week. I think so. I get just like another coach. Jürgen joined last week. I think we've got one of the sweep coaches joining this week, and it's just nice to keep that fresh, because again, a lot of these coaches I'd probably bump into and have a conversation with just organically 3 or 4 times a week at Caversham, and actually suddenly you're not, and it's a nice way of keeping that going. And then just the normal thing, WhatsApps and stuff like that. I think the one thing I have found quite nice about this period actually is non-rowing friends are a lot more available. So I think a lot of people have found that they're catching up with people that they've been meaning to. I don't know, we're going to get trials out of the way and then I'll call X, and it's quite nice to have that time to do that and catch up with their lives as well. So yeah, I'm kind of sick of video calling though. It'd be nice when we're actually able to see people in person, but similarly it's great that this technology is here.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people are probably feeling the same way as you, Ellie, that they've been on so many of these now, all through different platforms, that it is getting a little bit old. But a really good point that you make there about catching up with non-rowing friends, because I feel like a lot of us are always that friend that's, oh, I'm sorry, I've got rowing. And now perhaps, you know, a bit more time to spend with them. Matt, George, for you, what have the men's squad been doing from a social aspect? Similar things, or?
We've got WhatsApp groups, a big men's WhatsApp group which has had some good traffic on, and then smaller ones, you know, with your crewmates and things like that, which has had, I'm sure everyone's seen all the silly viral videos that are going around, so that's keeping everyone going. We're still trying to set up some kind of Zoom game, but we're still waiting for someone techie enough to figure that one out. But it's been good. You know, not seeing each other every day is maybe a bit refreshing to start with, but it's nice to keep in touch with each other through these other means.
Yeah, I think we've been quite good. Like Ellie said, the men's squad had a big chat with Jürgen, which is quite nice. He nailed the technology, which is quite impressive for a 74-year-old. That was actually really good. And yeah, it's been quite nice. Every Friday I chat to a couple of my mates from Durham Uni, and one of them claims that he's trying to reinvent house music. He claims to be a DJ, and he's really enjoying that. And then just other friends catching up. I've got, you kind of sometimes take stock of the situation. I'm chatting to a mate who's in Sydney. He's just moved there. He's on a friend's sofa and he's got no job, and is kind of struggling a little bit. But it kind of puts things into context, and nice to have the chance to chat to him. But I think most people are getting by, I think, okay at the moment.
And it actually, from what you've all said so far, it sounds like not having the routine of Caversham has given you a bit of fresh air, even if it's just temporarily, some bit of a change of scene, different things to focus on, a different day structure. I was just thinking a bit of a sort of different question here. A couple of you I know have been sort of faced with more serious injuries. Matt, I know you had one a little while ago. Ellie, as recently as last year. Do you feel that any things that you learned through having an injury and perhaps training away from the squad for a while, having to sort of adapt your training programs, adapt from being out of the boat, has helped you in these circumstances? I don't know, Matt, I'll probably pass that one to you first.
Yeah, I think, yeah, my girlfriend is a rower. She's at Leander Club, and she was, I think, struggling quite a bit training on her own. And it made me think I haven't really ever had to train specifically rowing on my own, but I think I've had lots of injury problems in the past. And I guess when you're thrown in that situation, you just have to knuckle down yourself. Like, I can't really remember all my back injury stuff, but in 2018, I tore my hamstring tendon and took 3 months out of the boat, and just my training program was very separate to the rest of the squad, and I had to go swimming on my own, had to go and use this awful arm bike at the local gym and do weight sessions on my own. And I think in the moment you just get on with it. And I hadn't actually thought, Camilla, that maybe that does build like a lot of resilience for moments like this. And I guess now it's easier because I can train with George and it's a bit more structured. But in those moments when it's just you and your back's really against the wall, it's quite difficult to be able to like get through without like self-motivation. So I've actually found it okay, just like getting on with it, and I'm used to the rowing machine, and yeah, hopefully no more ergo injuries. But I think it must kind of build, and I know George has had back injuries in the past where he's had to do lots of stuff on his own, and yeah. But I think a lot of sports people in any walks of life will have obstacles, and tough times don't last, tough people do.
Great sentiment. George, I don't know whether you want to build on what Matt said there, because he mentioned you'd had a couple of back injuries. Have you got anything more to add?
Yeah, no, I just agree. I think when you have an injury, you know, the coaches are always, you know, you've got coaches, physios and S&C coaches all trying to help you, but their priority is always going to be the healthy athletes that are in the boat. So you are more independent, and it takes more effort perhaps, but I think it's something that if you can do well, and you know, anyone that's had an injury, I'm sure have dealt with it well, and then when you come out the other side, it does make you a better athlete because you think more for yourself and you think, you know, is this good, is this bad, what's best for me, as opposed to just purely listening to the coaches. Obviously you should listen to the coaches, but also being able to think for yourself is also useful, and it clearly helps in this time now when we're you know, away from the system.
I'm not going to advocate not listening to your coaches to a lot of the people on this call, but I think that's really good advice, sort of taking a bit of initiative into your own programs and utilising what you've learned. And Ellie, your injury is far more recent. I know last season you had a bit of a nasty shock. I don't know whether you want to kind of talk about your experience from last year and perhaps some of the things you brought through.
A bit dramatic. I think, yeah, I'd absolutely echo what Georgia just said about that personal decision making is definitely a skill that carries you through lots of different situations. And so whilst we've all got that experience and we're bringing it into now for I don't know, other rows, if you haven't been injured yet, these skills that you're gaining now will be helpful in future. That's not to say you're going to get injured, but there will definitely be times when you've got to train on your own because of uni schedules or injury or other things. And actually, we're definitely exploiting skills that we've learned the hard way, having gone through horrible bits, but they definitely will be carried forward. Yeah, unfortunately, last season I had a rib injury and then a foot injury, and it led to like quite an extended period training on my own, and with my foot I was in a cast and then a walker boot for quite a period of time, and I'd actually blanked it from my mind, but I had to spend a lot of time on the arm bike that Matt was talking about, and it's grim, and there's days when, you know, the time just ticks by really slowly, and I guess it comes back to working out what works for you. So for me, actually keeping a fairly regular schedule and routine is just what works for me. And actually I found that by being fairly regular with my training times, if I was having a good day, that was great, but actually on the days when I wasn't, and we all have them, even when everything's great, you still have up and downs, and especially in a period like this or with injury, that routine really carried me through the troughs, because there was, okay, I'll do this session and then I'm going to do the next session at 11 and then 2, and it sort of dragged you through, even though you could do training whenever you wanted. And I think the other things, just really simple things, like when I was on the arm bike, there was a couple of podcasts that were really good at the time. Actually, when with my foot injury, it was the Rugby World Cup, and some of my training was bodyweight squats. So I'd I'd be squatting in the gym and watch the first half of the rugby, and so even now, every time I do a session, it sounds really simple, but making sure I've got a really good playlist on, because you take it for granted when you're at Caversham that, you know, I like music, but I'm not in charge of a playlist, that someone will put a good playlist on and there's a good atmosphere. So it's about, you just got to be a bit more proactive about recreating that. So yeah, I definitely think, as much as now is uncomfortable, and prior injuries have been uncomfortable periods to go through, it's amazing how many of those skills that you end up using later, even though it might be a different context.
Camilla, can I just add on what Ellie was saying about routine? I think so Caversham was closed about a month ago, and George and I moved back with our parents, and the first week or so was a bit like a holiday. Like, didn't set an alarm in the morning, and I was like, oh, this is great, just lie in bed, like do whatever. And I felt a bit rough for it. Like, I think I've struggled with my mental health in the past, and I definitely felt a bit wobbly just from being a bit all over the place. And I think I told myself, right, I need a bit more structure. So it's still quite leisure. Like, I get out of bed at 8 in the morning, alarm off at 8, then get out of bed at 8:30, then I'll be on the ergs by 10, and then second session at kind of 1ish. And I don't think it matters, like, for whatever, if you're like training or at school or you're working, I think we're all creatures of habit and are very used to our routines. And for us rowers, that was completely taken away. So I think ensuring that there is routine is very important, and something that I crave. And I think in this lockdown period, routine isn't necessarily enforced on you. So I think it's quite important to kind of make your own routines, and also to remember to take a bit of time for yourself. Like, I don't know if you found it quite intense, Ellie, but and you, Camilla, as well, as your fiance's family's home. But I read an article about an army general who operates in a forward operating base in Afghanistan, and he was saying, obviously what we're doing isn't particularly similar, but there's elements that are. And he was saying that one thing was to always make your bed in the morning, and then another one was to make sure you protect time for yourself, because if you're in Afghanistan or Iraq in a forward operating base, it's going to be pretty hectic. Whereas it's important to kind of find a couple of hours for yourself to read, to listen to some music, or just have your own headspace. So yeah, a bit of routine and some of those things I think have really helped me.
I think that's really good advice, and actually certainly I almost find that it's harder to set that time aside, because you almost feel like you should always be doing something. If you've got these big free days, it's really easy for time to bleed into other parts of the day, and even if you just take your time about doing things, it can almost leave no time for yourself. So yeah, I think that's really important advice, Matt. And talking of routines and preparing yourself for big events and having that sort of day-to-day schedule of knowing what you're working towards, there's a big thing that we've not yet covered, which is obviously the postponement of the Tokyo Olympics, which all of you will have had in your sights. Oh, no way. For those who didn't know, the Tokyo Olympic is postponed until next year. It would be good to know from you guys, because again, I know we've got a lot of people on the call who will have had events postponed in their own lives, exams, races, big things, small things. How did you guys process that uncertainty that led up to that day where that decision was taken? Because there was a long time between, knowing that the games was going ahead, that sort of grey area where I think the writing was on the wall, but there was no call, and then suddenly that day where the news came that the date had changed. Ellie, I don't know if you want to talk us through your kind of thought process and how you quantified that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The writing was on the wall for a while, so when it was actually confirmed, it was good to get the confirmation, but it wasn't a shock, apart from to Matt just now. I think what's probably the most difficult period was probably between that and when they were rearranged, because when you've got with anything, you have the end point and you plan backwards, and so it wasn't okay. The end point was unknown. Now it is. There's a rough plan in place in terms of finishing off the season, taking a break, going back to Caversham. All of that is still obviously unknown, because we're not sure how this is going to play out and when we might be back able to row. I think in terms of processing it, there's quite a mix of, for me personally, there's quite a mix of feelings, because given the season that I've just had, I wasn't in the boat to race. I was spare, so there's a big opportunity there, because it is another year. So if they'd gone ahead as planned, I wouldn't have been racing. But even then, so in a way, there's a lot of excitement because there's opportunity there, but there's also, I don't know, it's a big thing to get your head around in terms of other things that you had planned and what that means for them. And I guess the way that I did it was certainly give it time, let it settle. I think it was with a lot of things in them. Certainly, I feel that we've lost quite a few things. So be it the races or holidays planned or whatever. So there's quite a lot of grieving. I think that's a weird phrase to use, but there's definitely a lot of loss of things that we were looking forward to. I mean, even like Henley Regatta, that's gone, and it's okay. It's insignificant compared with what's happening elsewhere, but it's still something that you're looking forward to, and then is lost. So I think it's I'd say I've taken time, so not rushed it, and also accepted that there'll be different days where you feel differently about it. And I think also the other thing I've done is talked it through with people who get it, who understand why I feel that way about it. So I guess my advice would probably be pick your audience in terms of, if you would meant to be going to Henley with your crewmates, talk to them about it. Whereas I don't know, another friend who doesn't row perhaps won't quite understand why you're so disappointed that it's not going ahead. But no, it's still probably still hasn't fully sunk in. I don't know, even though it's happening, there's still days when you look around and think, is this actually happening? You know, I'm training at home. So yeah, it's taking time.
And it, as you say, kind of mixed feelings. It's really hard to battle those internalized feelings between great, another door for opportunity, like you say, to kind of try and improve your trials performance and try and make the boat for Tokyo 2021, and also that disappointment almost of not having that set date, because as you say, so much of our lives and your lives are geared towards that one date in time, and working backwards from that and planning ahead. So that uncertainty is going to be disappointing, I guess. And actually, George, I'm going to come to you next, because I think you've probably found a similar thing throughout the season and leading into trials. And again, that postponement, are you feeling similar things with another year to train, another year to get more miles under the belt and potentially better your position in the squad? Or are you sort of also feeling that, you know, you'd lay down a really good performance, second in the B final at trials, and you were in on a really good platform to step up into that seat this year?
I think I agree with Ellie. There's definitely a part of me, there are things this season that didn't go all that well, you know, a couple of the erg tests, and it, you know, it was a solid result at trials, but it wasn't, you know, it wasn't what I'd been dreaming of, my Olympic trials result. So big parts of me think, oh, amazing, I get to do the Olympic trials again, I get to do erg tests in Olympic year again where I can do better. But then you have, you know, slightly worse days when you think, Jesus Christ, like Olympic year fighting for selection was a seriously topsy-turvy journey. Can I do that again? But I think in reality, I think what Ellie said about it not really having sunk in is probably correct. It's too far away, you know, whatever, nearly 500 days away. You have to just break it down. You know, we've got things we're doing on the ergo every other week, quite challenging pieces. And you kind of just break it down into focusing on that 2 weeks at a time. Whereas if you think, oh, I'm going for selection in a year's time for an event that's well over a year, it's a bit too much to get your head around at the moment, I'd say.
Yeah, I think if I can add, I think, I don't know if I speak for Ellie and George, but I think the standard of the British team is incredibly high, and I've been so absorbed with getting selected that I know a lot of like our teammates have been pretty gutted and have had to really kind of grieve the Olympics being cancelled. But I've almost like fortunate that I've been so like obsessed with getting selected, doing well at trials, trying to make myself as good as possible to make the British team, that the Olympics almost wasn't on my horizon. Like I imagine that would have happened through the World Cups and all the hype and getting your kit and all that kind of stuff. But in reality, I've just cracked on, and training's been quite a nice tonic, because it just train, you're used to it and kind of feel the day. And on the flip side, I had a little chat with some of the Shrewsbury rowers, because our coach from Abingdon School is now the head of rowing at Shrewsbury, and it made me think that we get the chance to go to the Olympics because it's been postponed, whereas the GB under-16 match against France, the Coupe, the Junior Worlds, Bucks, was Fiji this summer? Not sure. Anyway, those events, your A levels or your GCSEs or anything, when your age is a limiting factor, that's gone. Say you wanted to race Henley that your last year at school, or have your leavers ball or something, that's really, really hard. And I remember that I left school and was sad, and then I got the chance to race Henley. I mean, we weren't all that good. We only made the Friday, but it was a really nice kind of finishing point. Whereas for kids and teenagers now, or even uni students at Bucks, I mean, that's really difficult. I think it's obviously heartbreaking that the Olympics is postponed, but at least it's happening. Whereas for some younger people, my heart really goes out to them, and hopefully people can still kind of find some kind of closure or stay motivated for what's next for them.
I think that's really good to hear from you, Matt, especially because you had such a good performance at trials. You know, having won Olympic trials in Olympic year, there's not much closer you can get to guaranteeing your seat in the team, and then having to go through that all again. I think hearing how you've almost, not even really thought about the Olympics until that point, or even not at all, is just really good on focusing on each day at a time. And I think that's what a lot of the people listening in on this webinar will just appreciate hearing, I guess, is that everyone's going through the same thing at the moment, whether you've won Olympic trials or whether you're missing out on your last year at Henley, or at the British Senior Champs or the Junior Champs or whatever it is, Bucks. It's just being able to all have that thing in common, and that's really good to hear. And actually, things in common, it would be good actually for you guys to talk about any sort of interesting ways you've found to keep training lively. Has there been something that you've talked about sort of normal methods like getting out on the road bike and erging, but is there any other sort of weird and wonderful ways you've found to keep fit and strong? Any really interesting challenges you've set yourself? Anything that you can sort of set a challenge out to the guys at home? Ellie, I'll come to you first.
So I have to be a little bit careful because I don't have a great track record in terms of being a bit clumsy with things. So I have to be fairly careful in what challenges I choose. Yeah, I've just picked up a few unfortunate injuries in the past couple of years that mean that I've sort of trying not to take many risks. I think that the one thing that I have quite enjoyed doing in this time is doing a bit more yoga. For me, it's one of those things. Oh, wouldn't it be nice if I did yoga, every day? Wouldn't that be nice for my body? And the reality is, when you're doing 3 big sessions and you're doing all the, rightly so, doing all the conditioning and stretching around, then you just run out of time. So I think certainly not having to commute, as in wake up, have breakfast and ready to train, I'm kind of using that time to do a bit of that. I guess my word of warning, one of my friends actually tore a load of ligaments in her arm doing the t-shirt headstand challenge. So I guess if you pick something, like just be careful, because like absolutely have a challenge, but you want it to not end you up in A&E or something. I think the one thing actually, listening to Matt reminded me of, so when I was a junior I had a good J16 year, and then was sort of really going really well in the J17 year, and actually I won the Boston Trial and then got a cold and didn't respect it properly, and ended up the rest of that season I wasn't asked to do any rowing because I got sort of post-viral stuff. And it sort of has a few parallels with the situation now, in that all of what I thought I was going to be doing for the summer and was going to be talking to my friends about and whatever, it just went. And there were quite a few weeks I was quite serious. Well, I took it quite badly. It was my thing, and I couldn't do my thing anymore. And actually, I ended up learning to drive through that bit. And so, although you might choose to pick an athletic challenge, it might also be a chance to pick something that's not to do with training or rowing, and actually learning to drive. I mean, I appreciate that might be a bit more difficult in the current situation, but something like that that's functional and a bit different helped me have a different purpose when I couldn't do what I wanted to be doing. So yeah, I've just yoga's as far as I'm going at the moment.
Sounds
sensible. We haven't done all that much different apart from the grey machine and some weights, but I think people, if anyone follows Ben Stokes on Instagram, he's been doing a press up challenge to what's the song called?
I think it's Moby Flower.
And he goes Sweet Sally up, Sweet Sally down. So you do a press up in time to that, which is really, really fiendish. We've got nowhere near the end, but to kind of throw that in the end of a session. But otherwise, it's just been regular training. Except George and I had a run off yesterday, and George had my pants down.
So you guys have been more competitive. You've been able to be more competitive with your challenges.
Yeah.
Talk them through it.
Well, we trotted up to the Newbury Parkrun course yesterday evening for our optional training session for the afternoon, so that was quite fun, and it's about the only thing I can beat Matt at as well. So
I think you should keep picking the challenges, George, by the sounds of things.
Yeah.
Your backhand's better than mine at table tennis. You claim. But yeah, I think Ellie, I think you're really right there. I know Ollie Cook is turning 30 soonish, and he's trying to do 30 things before he turns 30 new things, and I think he's learning to maybe picking up his Arabic again, various other things. But yeah, lots of exciting things to do. And I think we're so lucky, our generation, that like aside from the amazing like depth of Netflix, there's like YouTube is the most amazing thing in the world, and that you can learn any skill off the back of that.
And actually on that, I on the weekend I had a lesson from my dad in how to change both headlamps in my car, one of which is quite convoluted because you've got to take this box out and whatnot. And yeah, I think it's you know, obviously it's good life skills, but also it's a nice it's a sort of silver lining of this period, that usually I'd be back for the weekend and I just want to see them and have dinner and then go the next day, and we wouldn't have time to spend an hour fiddling with the car and me learning something. So I think yeah, I love the idea of 30 things before you're 30. I think also it's with,
I mean, he's on like 3, I think, so
right, it's on here now, he's got to do it. But I think the thing with training and rowing is that you're always working towards something, and I think we've all sort of found that to begin with it was like a nice holiday in terms of like, oh, you can do anything. But I think even on the best holiday you'd get bored after a couple of weeks. So actually having something that's got a bit of routine, a bit of purpose, a bit of direction, whatever that looks like, is helpful. And certainly, I don't know, there's a new platform that's been set up which does some webinars for sports people. So a couple of us on the team have been doing those in the evenings, and it's been nice to, I don't know, do something different that also for that hour I don't think about rowing or the Olympic postponement or how my training's different or my 30 minutes tomorrow or whatever. And it's getting that I don't know, switching off in different ways, as we were talking about earlier, about actually finding time for yourself, because often, because we're now available the whole time, in theory you can Zoom call the whole time, or just be like, there's some days to begin with where I was busier than I would be normally, and I couldn't quite work it out, and it was just because you can't really say, you know, if someone wants to call, well, you're not doing anything else, so etc. So I think I like the press up challenge as well, because it sounds safe. Like I feel like you can really hurt yourself.
It's really hard.
Yeah, so anything like that, absolutely.
I feel like I should be like saying a disclaimer here. I'm like, only try things if they're really safe and that you're not going to injure yourself. But you've given some really good advice and some non-athletic advice as well about picking things up and spending the time wisely. I'm conscious that we've only got a few minutes left before we're going to go to questions. So just if anyone has joined a bit later, you can ask a question on the sideboard. We'll be coming to those in a few minutes with James. But the last, so get those in if you want to ask a question. We'll be coming to those in a few minutes. But the last question I'm going to ask to you guys is actually, you know, hopefully we'll all be out of lockdown at some point over the summer, and with the games now postponed and all rowing competitions now pushed back, is there anything that you're planning to do with your summer, you know, whether we're inside, outside, wherever, that you weren't going to be able to do before? Ellie, you can go first.
I guess the two things for me are spending time. Oh, got a bit of an echo. So I wouldn't usually have spent this amount of time with my parents, which is really special. And I think, particularly as you get older, you realise just how special that is. And I think the second thing, I'm not actually locked down with my boyfriend at the moment because we're at our families. So I'm just really looking forward to seeing him again. And I think we're going to do, we actually had a chat today about what a summer holiday might look like, and it will definitely be in the UK, but really making the most of that, whatever that looks like, rather than, I don't know, taking it for granted. And I think that's sort of true of a lot of things now, that you, I don't know, you miss them and you didn't realise how good they were. So yeah, family and boyfriend.
Same for you guys.
Yeah, pretty much. I was chatting to, I've got an Aussie mate who's recently got engaged to a Turkish girl, and they're getting married, or meant to be getting married in August. And but one slight positive from a selfish perspective is that their wedding was due to be on the same day as a guy called Tim Clark, who George and I rode with at school, and he was in the national team at the start of the Olympiad. So hopefully with this, I can go to Tim's wedding this year, and then hopefully Aussie Dave will rearrange his to next summer. So that's one positive. There's also potentially going to be a Durham University Boat Club golf club versus Newcastle University Boat Club golf club Ryder Cup.
I certainly know who I'm going to be supporting. So
yeah, which hopefully that actually I think need to start arranging that. Yeah, just same old really. I think our sister recently walked the Pembrokeshire coast path, and she's always battered on about how amazing the UK is for holiday. And I think if people aren't flying around anytime soon, I think that's no bad thing. Like, we're very lucky in the UK. There's so much amazing stuff that we have on our doorstep. So I think, yeah, doing some of that hopefully.
Yeah, I think similar to Ellie, both Matt and myself, our girlfriends are with their parents. So I think spending some good time with them will be looking forward to that. And also, clearly, the holidays abroad are probably not going to be a possibility. So like these two have both said, planning something really fun in the amazing parts of the UK, I think will be good to look forward to.
How about you, Camilla?
Probably similar, trying to travel a little bit more. I'm planning for my own wedding, which is next year. So a bit more time to spend on that, a bit more time to spend with the family. So yeah, grateful for a bit of extra time. Well, look, thank you so much for answering my questions. I'm going to bring James back in now, because I'm hoping that we've got some really good questions from our audience members who have been tuning into you guys. So James, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Camilla. So if anybody does still want to ask questions, we've got a few come in, but if you do still want to ask questions, make sure you type into the box on the side. I'll start off with a question for all of you. So what advice would you have for athletes who don't have any contact with a coach while they're away from their club? So we know quite a few coaches who've been furloughed and aren't allowed contact with their athletes. So what advice would you give those athletes?
I would say you don't need a strict program, but write yourself a vague plan, maybe 2 weeks at a time. And I would set yourself targets. So maybe every other weekend you have some kind of challenge, whether that be on the ergo or cycling or running, something to build up to. Because, you know, not everyone knows how, you know, we're all athletes, not coaches. We don't know how to write a program, but you give yourself targets and something to aim for. Otherwise, it's easy to end up sort of aimlessly ticking over, and you don't really know what you're building for.
Yeah, I'd echo what George is saying. I think if you can't speak to your coaches, speak to senior athletes at the club or people you respect, or even DM people online. I think there's no danger in doing that. But I think it's very important to write a plan, even if it's on a scrap bit of paper, and then there's something very rewarding in ticking off something that you've achieved. So I think if you're just kind of waking up and thinking, oh, I'll do this, I'll do that, I think setting a plan, and like, I think we're not coaches, but it's possible to kind of look back through your old training plans and work out what roughly would be good. And if you enjoy cycling, do some of that, or yeah. So I think make a plan is a really, really good advice.
Brilliant. So Matt, a specific question for you. So you've been in the squad and sport for a long time, and due to injuries, you've had to take time while you've seen others progress. You seem very happy and content and enjoying your rowing as much or more than ever. Are you able to enjoy the journey now? And is this delay just another opportunity for you?
I think that's a very good question. And if you'd asked me that question at different points in the season, I'd probably give you very different answers. And I live with George, and he'll hear the worst of it. And I'm not always the best at managing my emotions. And there's times when I really enjoy training. Like last summer, I rode in the British 4 with Rory, Sholto, and Ollie, and we had a bit of a bromance all summer, and like really enjoyed training, and like some of the races went well, some didn't necessarily, but that whole process I really enjoyed. And then we kind of got back into the Olympic testing for this year, which was, I'm not going to lie, like incredibly stressful, and probably something I wouldn't want to go through again. But in life, you get through things, and because you just kind of have to, and you always deal with what's in front of you. And like we talked about earlier, I haven't really got to grips with next season yet. Like, I think at the moment I'm just dealing with kind of day to day, week to week, trying to enjoy myself and the training, and enjoy a bit of kind of headspace from Caversham. And I think the vague plan is to go back to Caversham in September, and I guess when that happens, it definitely will be an opportunity to go well again. But yeah, I think it certainly is an opportunity, but I think ultimately all you can do is your best. So when everything starts up again and through the rest of this period, it's just do all you can to the best of your ability, and ultimately that's all you can do, and do it with a smile on your face.
Brilliant. And so a question for all of you. Ellie, we'll start with you. Same question to everybody though. How did you get into rowing at the start?
So I learnt at school in Bedford, literally just because my elder sister did it and she was having a good time. And if you're a younger sibling, you always want to do what your older sibling's doing. Bedford's a great place to learn because there's a lot of clubs on quite a small bit of river, so there's lots of traffic and lots of races going on. A lot of bridges, so if you don't row there and you come to do Bedford Head or Bedford Regatta, you hate it, but as a local you love it. I was actually really fortunate. My first coach was a coach called Mick Deards, and he was just fantastic, and he absolutely loved getting people into rowing. And he actually used to sort of annoy the other sports coaches because he managed to get so many girls wanting to row. And one of the sort of sad things about school rowing sometimes is the numbers drop out as you get older, as exams come in. And he was really good at keeping quite a core group of people through. And a lot of the people who learnt to row with me and under him at university, at school, then picked it up later at university. Yeah, unfortunately he passed away a few years ago, but there's definitely a lot of his legacy left in the boat club still there, and a lot of people, like I said, who he taught to row are still rowing or certainly super active. So that was me.
It's lovely hearing the stories of the coaches that we all started with as well. Matt, George, how did you both get into rowing?
George and I have both been probably decent at quite a lot of sports. I say George is probably a better multi-sporter, annoyingly, including PlayStation and golf sometimes. But yeah, so through school, literally played everything possibly could, like rugby, football, cricket, sailing, tennis, table tennis, golf, squash. And then, as Ellie was saying, like as you get older, you have to gradually cut things down. And at Abingdon in my first year, I rowed for a year and didn't particularly enjoy it. I was called Big Bow Matt in our octo because I was a bit chubby, and then played cricket in the summer term. And because I thought I should give rowing a go because our dad rowed for Goldie at Cambridge. And then the next year in J15, I still wasn't totally convinced, but ended up kind of sticking with it and only playing a tiny bit of cricket in the summer. And then, yeah, just kind of like went on it from there. And I think the story of George getting into rowing is identical to Ellie. So I think I was enjoying rowing and making nice friendship groups and everything. And then George thought, I should probably give that a go, see what the fuss is all about.
Yeah, I actually started a bit later. So when I went to Abingdon School, I didn't row in my first year because I was playing hockey and cricket. And I ended up going to watch Matt at the Junior Worlds in Beijing. We were lucky enough to take the trip out there, and I actually cycled alongside when they won in the 4, and I thought, oh, that was pretty cool. I should probably try. And I was not great to start with, but enjoyed it enough to keep going, and luckily, fell in love with it. And that was a long time ago now, so it's still going.
Excellent. Next question for you. So for all of you again, we all know the monotony of ergs in particular, but also doing weights. How do you keep yourself motivated when you're doing those things? So how about we start with George this time?
It's a good question. I think motivation comes and goes with the erg. I think something Ellie said earlier about good music. I think if you
Yours is awful.
It's good.
Yours is awful.
A good playlist or two to keep you going. You know, if you just listen to this, well, actually maybe more is better. If you listen to the same music every time, you're going to get bored. And I think a bit similar to what I said before, if you can set yourself challenges, you know, if you want to row a certain split for a certain distance, or you want to try and keep your heart rate below a certain number, set yourself challenges, and as you get closer to achieving the goals, it'll, you know, it won't be boring, it'll be satisfying that you're achieving these things. Yeah, that's about it, I think.
Brilliant. Well, I'll leave all the questions for now. Just leaves me to say thank you to Matt, George, Ellie and Camilla for doing tonight's webinar. Thank you all very much for doing that. We also need to thank British Rowing's official analytics partner, SAS, for their support of the lockdown webinar series as well. Just a reminder, this video will be uploaded to YouTube at some point tomorrow, and the link will be put on the British Rowing website as well under the webinars panel. The next webinar we have coming up is Creative Training Ideas at Home, which will be done by our Henley Royal Regatta Charitable Trust coaches. Challenge anybody to say that 5 times quickly. Yeah, that's everything. So as well, the last thing from us is there will be a survey sent out tomorrow. We'd love to hear your responses to the webinars going forward, and there's also a place on the website as well to put your ideas forward about what you would like to see in the webinars as well. So yeah, that's everything. So thank you, everybody. Yeah, we hope to see you on the next webinar.
Bye. See ya.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.